Hello, welcome to this week's episode of the Combat Chats podcast. In this week, we're going to be going over the first card of the year. It's Ankalaev and Walker. Last fight wasn't ideal. It wasn't the ideal outcome at all, really. It was, I suppose you could argue it was a disappointment, really. Disappointing decision making. However, regardless, they have ran it back, and they've ran it back quite quickly as well, to be fair.
Yeah, the main event, one we were very excited for last year, and we spoke about how many different ways the fight could go, just mainly because of Johnny Walker's unpredictability, and probably our favourites in Ankalaev as being the better fighter as well. But overall, this card, first one back of the year, is a lot of great fights to talk about. The rematch of Manuel Cape, looking to put on a show. The last fight was insane. A lot of news to talk about today as well. You know, we've had some massive fight announcements and stuff like that in the last week.
It's really interesting because when it first thing of the year, it's always a matter of announcing the initial fights, and it's interesting as well because we've got some really good ones. I think next week as well, 297, that's Sean Strickland Dreykus. So that is also something to really look forward to. However, overall, it's a really exciting start of the year, and with news as well as the announcements, there's also a lot of other bits to talk about as well.
Yeah, one big boxing match that I'm very, very excited to talk about.
Very much so. Starting us off though, Phil Hawes, Bruno Ferreira.
Yeah, I mean, on paper, I think it's a good fight. Both of them being knocked out last time out in the first round. Phil Hawes, very good technical fighter, great striking, great wrestling. But, you know, one thing that you can't have in the fight game is a glass chin. And, you know, without disrespecting him, he has got that. It seems like you can't really trust betting on this guy or picking this guy because anytime he gets caught clean, he goes down. Bruno Ferreira, very hard hitter, was 10-0 when he came to the UFC. I'm 9-0 and then 10-0 with Gregory Rodriguez. Great first win out. Obviously getting knocked out in the first round in his last time out, but I think this could be a very good bounce back fight for Bruno Ferreira.
Oh yeah, you're definitely right about the knockout power. He's called the Hulk.
Yeah.
And the way he throws, he's one of these big, heavy hitting middleweights. He's really stocky. He is really, really big. He's a very, very big person. Phil Hawes, like you said, the chin is always a concern, especially when you look at his last fight out. That was a very hard knockout. That was a very harsh one. And a lot of the time we talk about how fighters recover from that, how they look in their next fight. That looks like a hard one to recover from, especially when it's somebody like Ankalaev, who is just on an absolute tear at the moment, one of the best debutants of 2023, without a doubt. Phil Hawes, though, like you said, his technicality, he's definitely the more technical fighter.
Yeah.
The way he puts everything together, he trained out in Thailand and he came back looking even better, and he looked really good in his last fight until he got finished.
Yeah, and that's usually the way it's going with Phil Hawes as well. You know, he's got the skills on the planet to be a legit top 10 fighter, but one thing lets him down, and it's a bit annoying to watch sometimes.
Definitely so. It's unfortunate. I think as well as that, like with Bruno Ferreira, the way he fights, how aggressive he is from the get-go. If you notice, like if you look at a lot of his fights, he's charging at you immediately. He's throwing that front kick.
Yeah.
He is on you immediately, and it's all a matter of how Phil Hawes reacts to it. Because if he doesn't react well, if he doesn't kind of stand his ground or put on the pace a little bit, he is going to get backed up very quickly, and he's going to take a lot of damage, and it could be a very early one.
Yeah, I think the great point you make about Phil Hawes backing up, that is the worst case scenario for him in this fight. The only way he wins this fight, in my opinion, if he's the one pushing that action at all times. He can't allow Ferreira to get comfortable at any moment. Ferreira's a really good sort of light on his feet, blitzy fighter, you know. He can kind of jump in and catch you wild at any moment, and Phil Hawes, that's a recipe for disaster. So I think the safe pick on this one will be Phil Hawes. I think he'll probably start the fight better. He'll be looking like a really solid performance, and then he's going to get caught. But what do you rate his chances of him seriously pulling off a win here? He's definitely got the skill for it.
Well, the skill's definitely there. The technique on the feet, he is probably the better technical fighter. My only concern is that last knockout, with what that shows really, and a lot of the time how you'd recover from that as well, because he was out for quite some time.
And then the knockout before that was even worse, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
That Dolidze knocked him out against the fence. That was brutal.
And I think putting fighters like that against heavy hitters like Bruno isn't always the best matchup at all, really. I understand you can't always put them against favourable matchups, and you don't want to do that at all, really. That's not what the sport's about. It's not all about having favourable matchups for fighters. a lot of the time it's all about who they have to fight. With Bruno Ferreira, however, he is known for his power. This is what he's known for. He is good technically as well. He is very good technically. However, he's not so much an in-the-pocket fighter. He's a heavy hitter, and he's throwing it all at you. I think it all depends on how he reacts. I also think with Bruno Ferreira can get him there early. I can see this being over in the first minute or so. I really can.
Yeah, I think Bruno Ferreira came into the UFC with such a big knockout win over Gregor Rodriguez, who, he was meant to be fighting Brad Tavares that weekend, and Ferreira stepped in short notice and got such a big knockout, and then to go get knocked out by a debutant in his next fight. For this one, he'll be real fired up, real hungry, wanting to prove a point. I think, he's just got a bit more, when you've only had one loss and it's a loss, just, you can get caught at any point like that, can't you? So one loss, I think the confidence for him, he'll be able to lock himself back in. And Phil Hawes, when you get knocked out that many times, you're always scared to kind of get hit with that first shot. And I think the first shot he is going to get hit with is going to be a big one. I'm going first round knockout. I think, Phil Hawes will look good, but Bruno Ferreira is just going to catch him. I think he'll be over in the first, by the end of the first round. I'm going to go first round knockout.
Yes, I'm going to go the same. Like you said, I think that when you have been knocked out a few times, you do tend to start fighting a bit more cautiously. And that's not really what he needs to do, because the pressure will be applied if he does fight like that. He will be bombarded. This is somebody who knocked out Gregory Rodriguez.
Yeah.
And Gregory Rodriguez has been able to add towards that eyebrow, was it?
Yeah.
Or the eyelid, or like...
That was brutal against Inchikani.
Yeah,
the knee on it, that was horrible.
So this is somebody who could take a beating, and he was able to finish him within the first round in a very good clinical fashion as well. It was a really good finish.
Yeah.
So both of these, yes, they haven't finished recently. However, in fairness, the guy he was fighting as well was like, he had such a weird record.
Yeah, it was an interesting guy. It looked so scary. Like, I can't even remember his name.
It's a hard name to pronounce. I remember that.
Yeah, I'm not going to try, but it's Rizabeov or something like that. Rizabeov.
Yeah. It's really interesting to think that he's not that heard of either.
No, he's had like almost 50 pro fights.
It's crazy, really.
Yeah. So yeah, both of us pretty confident Bruno Ferreira on this one. Phil Hawes definitely has the skill set to get it done. This one, I won't be shocked, but this would be one of the biggest underdog wins on the card, probably, in my eyes. I don't know, on the betting odds. But getting on to the next fight, Ricky Simone against Mario Batista. Batista on a very good run at the moment in the UFC, beating Blackshear in his last fight. After Blackshear was on, a big sort of jump up after that Twister win. Very competitive fight last time out. Ricky Simone brings a whole sort of the same skill level, same skill set as Blackshear, just with a lot more veracity and speed and power, because he's massive for the weight class. I think Ricky Simone is probably going to aim for a wrestling heavy approach here. He does have very good striking too. Both of them pretty good on the feet. This is a very good matchup in my eyes.
So it's really interesting. Something which I feel like Ricky Simone does very well is level change. He will kind of draw you in, and then he changes up the tempo completely. And this is something which I think Mario Batista is going to have a lot of trouble with. Both are good on the ground, and Batista does have some very, very good wrestling defense. He has some very good jiu-jitsu as well. So whether he decides to keep this on the feet or not, I'm not too sure. Both of these are very tough. I'm going to go for a second round submission for Ricky Simone, which is, I feel as though with Mario Batista, they're going to go to the ground. I think Ricky Simone will take him down, and I think he will work his way to a submission from the ground. Although saying that, this could also be an Aldi war, and it could also be a matter of the Ricky Simone finish, which is very possible. He's somebody who has quite a few finishes under his name, and he is very much, he's on you. The way he changes to level up, the moment you're drawn in, the moment he's charging towards you, he's charging at you with power.
Yeah.
And for a bantamweight, there are a few of these that he does hit you very hard.
Yeah, he's got great power in his hands, and just the effectiveness of, all right, he might not get the first or the second takedown, but he's one of these fighters who chain wrestle well. He's going to shoot multiple takedowns. Even if you keep stuffing him, he's just going to make it an ugly, gritty fight. It has worked against him a couple of times. There's a few fighters you can't do this with, but I feel like there'll be a big strength difference with him and Bautista. So on this one, I'm going to go Ricky Simone decision. I think Bautista's good enough everywhere to survive the bad moments. He will get put in with the wrestling. It's going to be maybe he'll come back in the third round, kind of make it a competitive fight. We did see in his last fight he just sort of ups the tempo later on in the round. So it'll be interesting to see what the third round is kind of like. But yeah, I'm going to go Ricky Simone decision. I think it's a safe bet. This could be one of the only fights on the main card that don't get a finish, in my opinion.
That would be interesting. He's only lost one in the last 6 fights, and he's won 2 of them by arm triangle choke.
Yeah,
which is quite impressive. I could maybe see this going the way. However, I think that Ricky Simone might be a bit too much for him.
Maybe. Yeah.
Although if it does go the way, it's going to be a very exciting fight.
Obviously, he being the first guy to finish the Welsh GSP as well, Jack Shaw. That was when I really first saw Ricky Simone and thought this guy was legit, because Jack Shaw, great jiu-jitsu, good wrestling, great kickboxer, and he managed to wobble him and almost knock him out and then submit him. So he's really skillful everywhere, which will cause Bautista a lot of problems. Another great matchup on the card. I think they've started off the year with great matchmaking from the UFC. So I think name-wise it might not be a huge card, but there's a lot of fights that are going to deliver. Even the prelims are pretty stacked as well. And getting into the next fight, an absolute legend of the sport. We're maybe a bit glad to see him on this card because, you know, if he gets a bad injury, he probably won't be able to be on UFC 300, being the only fighter to be on UFC 100, 200 and 300, I'm pretty sure, which is insane stat if he can get that done. Probably the favourite going in against Gabriel Benitez. How do you see this one playing out?
So this is an interesting one. Jim Miller, in his last few fights, he's consistently doing well. Like, he is still very much winning more than he's not, which is very impressive for somebody who, I think he's, 40 years of age now?
Yeah, 38, something like that. 40, yeah, he is 40. Yeah.
40 years of age, because I know when he fought Cerrone, he would have been like, 38,
Yeah.
30, back a couple of years back. This is an interesting one. Jim Miller, he's very good at the fundamentals, and he does the fundamentals very well. And when you look at what he's done for UFC with the introduction of the calf kick, obviously people were kicking each other's calves prior to it, but he really pioneered and utilised it. And now we see how many fighters there are who are at the top of the game, who do really use that calf kick as one of their almost not signature moves.
Well, some of them.
Well,
Alex
some
Pereira and people like that.
You know, like even like the Rakic's and whatnot.
Blachowicz as well loves it. There's a lot of fighters that use it.
On the feet, he does everything very well. On the ground, he's something else. And with this fight, this is a fight which I think Gabriel Benitez could potentially struggle with on the ground.
Yeah, definitely.
Gabriel Benitez, he's had a few finishes. He's been finished a few times. He leaves himself very open. However, I don't think that's going to be too much of an issue. And although we're seeing Jim Miller finish these guys on a regular basis on the feet, it's only kind of the guys who've got that range, who've got that reach, who really utilise it. It's these taller guys who are looking to, with Jim Miller, he's not super snappy. He is very bouncy on his feet, but he's in 3 or 4 punch combination and then he's out. And it's not so much in a sense in which we might see, like, a Guida so much, but more in a sense of these are damaging strikes. He lands lots of damaging strikes in just the correct amount of volume, just to weaken it down. Gabriel Benitez, he does often rush in, and he's very, very active and aggressive, and I think that could potentially cause an issue. I'm going to go Jim Miller. I'm going to go sub, second round. I think he's going to catch him. Yeah,
I think I'm kind of leaning the same way. I do think there are some dangers in this fight that Jim Miller needs to worry about. Being, pointing out the obvious stuff, being 40 years of age, being as deep into his MMA career as Jim Miller is. I think he's had the most fights in the UFC, or it's up there, but something like the most fights, the most wins, or one of those stats. So it shows how long he's really been in it.
53 fights.
53 fights, yeah, crazy. And there are some problems. I think the southpaw, Jim Miller will be used to fighting southpaws, but Benitez is a really sort of tricky southpaw, got that Mexican boxing style, nasty left body kick, high kick, even his calf kicks himself, always kicking low and mixing up with high kicks and body kicks. I think the power could cause Jim Miller a few problems being the smaller man, but I think the way he wins this fight is interesting. You mentioned Guida, and the fact that Clay Guida, that Jim Miller is so in and out with his combinations. I think he needs to sort of adopt the style of maybe staying in the pocket once he's thrown against Benitez, because we saw the fight with Billy Quarantillo. If you swarm him, he really struggles with the pressure. So I think Jim Miller, that's the way he'll find a finish in this fight, which I think that's what I'm going to go with as well. I think he's really going to pressure, look to mix in the wrestling with the hard power shots on the feet, and I think Benitez will get hurt, taken down, and submitted. That's my prediction. I'm going to go second round as well. I agree with you on that one.
It's interesting to see how the leg kicks because Hardman Rockhold.
Yeah,
which really,
apparently, yeah.
And it does say something, and you can always hear him as well. Every kick he throws, you can always hear, which you hear with a lot of fighters, but not as consistently as you're hearing these ones. They're very, very heavy kicks that could potentially cause some issues. But I'm very confident in Miller.
Yeah, and
the experience as well. Like he's fought so many big guys recently as well.
Yeah,
very recently.
And hopefully he gets a quick win here and manages to fight on UFC 300 as well, because that is a legendary stuff if he does that in his UFC career.
Yeah, and he'd have to be on 300 as well.
Yeah, he has to be, definitely.
Even if it's a prelim.
Yeah, it will be a prelim.
It will have to be unless they put 10 fights on the main card.
To be honest, my expectation for UFC 300, I know it sounds harsh, but I want to see Jim Miller on the early prelims. Apparently Calvin Kattar, Aljamain Sterling's on the prelims, so it shows what sort of level fights are going to be on the prelim.
Yeah, it's not really acceptable, is it?
No.
Putting a fight like that on the prelims. I suppose if the card is really that good, but you have to have every championship fight on there.
There's got to be hopefully, man, because the card right now is looking pretty good, but I mean, we're going to talk about it a bit later. UFC 299 stacking up compared to that is looking solid as well. Getting into the co-main event, the rematch, Matheus Nicolau against Manuel. How do you say it? I say Cape, but I don't Carp. I think the Americans say it, don't they?
I think it's Carp. However,
I'm staying with Cape.
Yeah, Manel Carp.
Yeah, no, I'm not saying that.
I think it's pronounced slightly differently, not like Carp the fish.
No.
Carp.
No. I'm all about Manuel Cape. I think excellent fight. Had a great year last year. His last fight against Felipe dos Santos. One of the fights we were talking about to put in our top 5 fights of the year that just didn't make it in. The first fight a few years back, both of them weren't ranked at the time, and it was a super close fight. I think Nicolau got the close decision, but there's definitely an argument Manuel Cape won that fight. What do you think? What did you think about that fight, and how different do you think this one's going to be?
So last fight, like you said, it was super close and it was super exciting as well. Both guys are unranked as well at the time. Early on in their careers, early on in the UFC, in their careers in the UFC, not where they are now.
Yeah,
I think this fight could be similar. I just think it's going to be better. I think that stylistically it's going to be very similar. I think that Manel Cape is going to be doing what he does, but a lot cleaner and a lot faster. And I think that Nicolau is going to be doing the same as well. I think that Nicolau, we were watching it, you mentioned about the knees.
Yeah.
The way he ducks down, and I mentioned prior to rewatching it about how he tends to dip in and then rise when he strikes. He kind of just gets lower and then gets high. I think that he's going to do a lot more of that, although I can also see him potentially getting seriously hurt whilst doing that. I think that's very, very risky to do.
Yeah.
I think this is a hard one because if this was a fighter who wasn't Manel Cape, I'd maybe be thinking finish. However, Cape is just so tough, and we saw him in his last fight, a really close fight against a really, really good looking prospect.
Yeah, that guy looks sick.
Really young. So I think this one could potentially be a 3-round decision. Whether Nicolau will do enough to potentially scrape it, I'm not too sure. However, for the most part, it's a really hard one to call. I could also see a finish on Manel Cape, but I'm going to go with what I think is a safe bet, though, and I'm going to go for a Manel Cape decision.
Yeah, I'm 100% with you on that one. In my personal opinion, I think Cape just scraped the last fight, won that, and he's really, really improved since then. Sort of turning up the output, which was his real problem. Coming into the UFC and fighting Panchota and fighting Panchota on your debut, losing that one. Such a hard fight to come in against, and then fighting Matheus Nicolau in his second fight and losing that one as well. it just shows the level he was seen at when he first came in the UFC, and now people are seeing him at that level again. A lot of people were picking him for like the outsider to go on and fight for a title this year. He had that obviously famous beef with Car France last year, where a few slurs were dropped that maybe shouldn't have been two on the same night. I actually think too, but yeah, this fight's going to be insane. Both such high level martial artists that, you know, two guys like this that fight. There's no chance it's not just a great martial arts fight.
I'd definitely say this is going to be a really exciting one, and I do hope it's a war.
Mm.
I don't think the way they fight is not going to be a sluggish war at all.
No.
And that's what's good about it. It's going to be very technical. It's going to be very in and out. The way Ankalaev fights, he kind of circles the octagon. He always fights on that.
Off the back foot. Yeah.
But it's not like he's ever getting backed up. He's controlling it from there. I think that with that, there's going to be a lot of opportunity for him to land. Chubler's cape is just so tough. He's going to be taking those shots.
Yeah, his chin seems so good. He keeps his hands so low. He does get hit with these big shots, but he eats them well. He scrambles really well as well. The wrestling exchanges will be really interesting. I do think Ankalaev's striking has reached another level since their last fight. He did get knocked out in the first round by Rovell, but that was by a knee as well, so it's interesting that you mentioned that. But yeah, all round he's got way better on the feet, probably mixes in his wrestling a bit better too. Cape's takedown defence and jiu-jitsu off his back are so good as well. So this one, for me, fight of the night, I think this will be the highest level fight of the card. Yep. And, so I'm going to go manual cape decision as well.
Yeah, no, I think that makes a lot of sense. I do feel like it will be really disappointing if he does get knocked out by a knee.
Yeah,
because at that point, you're clearly got like a hole in your game. And even the Manel Cape fight, he was throwing knees at him whilst doing that. So it's not as if it's something which he hasn't stopped doing. Which there's nothing wrong with necessarily ducking down when you need to. Sometimes you need to fight like that. However, at the same time, when you're making yourself prone to it, and when these fighters are seeing that you're dug your head down and you're vulnerable to a knee, you just need to not be doing that.
Yeah. Because they'll go to it every time. We saw Cape in their last fight. In the first round, he got taken down 2 times from going to that flying knee. In the last round, he stopped kind of jumping into it. He was just throwing it straight up the middle and was having much more effectiveness with that. Rovell didn't jump into the knee, threw it straight up the middle, so I think he'll be looking for that quite a lot. But yeah, I think it will be decision. They're both tough guys. Manuel Cape, I just think will up the pace, probably not give up the first round so badly. We saw the last 2 rounds the second round wasn't close. Cape really took over, and then the last round being super close as well. But I just don't think he'll give Ankalaev that chance to kind of get ahead in that first round. Going on to the main event, was kind of a weird one to break down last year. Do you feel like it's even weirder to break down now because they kind of have a bit more beef going into it, and tensions might be a bit higher after such a weird stoppage in the last one?
Well, it's interesting because I don't know if my opinions have changed slightly on how I think it will go. Last time out, the views I've had were maybe different to Johnny Walker as well. Because I feel like it's now really beginning to hit me that he's not a hype train. We knew that last time. However, he is just getting. It's a lot more setting in what he actually is. It's setting a lot more, even over a period of a few months. There is that beef there behind it. It was a dirty move, and it wasn't unintentional either.
No.
It's not a position in which you accidentally need someone raising your knee like that. You're throwing a knee.
Do you not think it was weird that was a no contest instead of a DQ?
I don't know. I think everything about that card was weird because there were a few fouls which were. I think there were there was an eye poke maybe which didn't take a point away from it. Yeah,
and then the Victor Henry.
And then I think there might have been another one as well. So there was something going on. They were all these Dagestani fighters. So I'm not saying anyone paid anyone off. It would make a lot of sense though. It would, there's a lot of money in that part of the world. So
I mean, I don't necessarily think that, maybe not, but that was a weird card because that was when Victor Henry got his nut exploded and the ref told him he was milking it, wasn't it? It was terrible.
I mean, he didn't even tell him he was milking it, he just told him it didn't happen.
No. yeah, he was like, I clearly saw that didn't hit you in the nuts.
Yeah, like he's VAR or something.
Yeah, he needed it. Well, to be fair, it didn't look like it, but he was taken to hospital afterwards and had to have scans and stuff. I don't know the extent of the injury, but I did hear rumours that it wasn't a nice injury.
I know they reported very quickly afterwards how serious it was.
Yeah.
And Victor Henry is also not somebody who is going to be rolling around screaming on the floor.
No.
Like, that's just not something in which...
Let's be real, no UFC fight. They're not footballers. They're not going to be diving around on the floor. Like, I mean, Aljo Sterling might be a bit different, but most of these guys are built like... They don't want to be diving around crying on live TV, do they?
No, not at all. And it's not something which you'd make up.
No.
Like, in whatsoever. Yeah, no, I mean, it is weird. It probably should have been a disqualification.
Yeah, I do think so,
like,
too.
Either a disqualification or maybe a no contest because it was unintentional.
But I just think, well, I don't get it, really. If it's a foul, it doesn't matter if it's intentional or not, does it? If he knocked him out cold, would have it been a no contest or would have it been a DQ? And why was the Aljamain one a DQ with Peter Yan and not this one? It's just so weird.
It's just, paid off.
Yeah, it does seem a bit fishy, doesn't it?
I'm not trying to be explicit first, but it makes a lot of sense. Like, if you actually look into it deep.
What, have you looked into it deep?
No.
Well, you got it then, haven't you? If you're making these claims.
Well, it just makes a lot of sense, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So clear.
No, not really. But anyway, let's move on to the actual fight. Again, but basically the same stuff we said last time. Johnny Walker brings such an unpredictability, and being 6'5", probably walked around with like 250 pounds. Brutal leg kicks, which is interesting. Ankalaev shown a bit of a weakness that in the past. Ankalaev, a decent favourite. Do you think Johnny Walker's chances? What do you think of Johnny Walker's chances? Sorry.
I think they're very high. I think he's got that far in him now. He's after what's happening, he's calling him a cheat. He's going to really, really want to avenge this. This is more important for him than ever before. I mean, it's probably one of the most important fights of his career.
Yeah.
To think that happens to you, and then, because fighting in Abu Dhabi, that was a massive, massive fight for him. That was what that was at the third top fight on the card. Was it before the co-main?
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, so that was the biggest fight of his career.
And let's be real, winner probably gets a title shot, right? I think so. Light heavyweight, full of not bums, but for the people who don't really like going on win streaks.
Well, it's Ankalaev or Johnny Walker. Those are the next two natural progressions.
I mean, Anthony Smith was in the top 5 last year.
Yeah. However, in all fairness to Anthony Smith, how many what was it?
What was what?
Nah, but
what question is that?
How many so-and-so would it take to beat?
Oh yeah, the question. He was so the CT might be kicking in a little bit because on the Bisping podcast he asked how many Jim Millers it would take to beat Brock Lesnar in a fight, and he said what he said he's pretty convinced one Jim Miller could beat Brock Lesnar in a fight.
Well, that's what I mean, and that doesn't have anything to do with ranking, does it really?
No, I don't know what that point was. I mean, maybe he's just got such a strange mindset. He crawls his way back into these positions.
Maybe. Yeah, they do get a title shot.
Yeah.
They should anyway. It makes the most logical sense. And looking at this fight, it's interesting because stylistically it's relatively exciting. Obviously, I know we talk about Ankalaev, but a lot of the time we think that he's generally quite static. And although he is to an extent, he is also his arsenal of weapons. He's one of the best counter-strikers in the UFC.
Yeah.
Without a doubt. The way he can pick you apart from staying in relatively the same position, and that's not to just say that's all he does. He does also walk around and take you down. It's an interesting one because with somebody like Johnny Walker, I don't know how well that will work, how effective that will work. You look at how tall Johnny Walker is, he's 6'6", right? The range on that, he is taller than the vast majority of people in that division.
Yeah.
And he is very much able to cause serious damage with that. You look at a lot of his knockouts or a lot of the big damage he throws from such weird angles,
he does.
And it's because he's able to hammer fist finishes against the octagon, against the cage. You can't do that if you're like 6'2".
The elbows to run span as well, where he's shot a takedown and just starts elbowing him in the side of the head.
Yeah, I've just realised with hammer fist, I say you can't do that if you're 6'2". You can, but not in the same way he does.
He like caught his leg, wasn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Like the where he was throwing it from. Yeah. I just realised to myself that sounds so like silly, you know what I mean? But yeah, so with that, I think that the range could be an issue. His kicks as well.
Yeah.
Both the kicks of him and Ankalaev, they both have such good kicking range. And it would be really interesting to see how both of them deal with the leg kicks, because both of them throw meaty leg kicks.
Yeah, I think Johnny Walker's built a bit more to deal with those leg kicks. You look at the size of Johnny Walker's legs, he must be able to take a few of them.
That's the thing, though. And a lot of it's genetic as well. He is just a genetic powerhouse, really.
Yeah, he's a monster. And that's kind of what, when he first came into the UFC and went on that 4 or 5 knockout streak, everyone was saying he's the next guy to beat John. Well, not the next guy, the only guy who can beat John Jones. And we saw how quickly that kind of fell down the drain. But managing to really get himself back into a position to fight for a title again. And he's grown so much technically since moving over to SBG Ireland. John Kavanagh probably was a sort of right fit, where Johnny Walker went to some very good gyms. He trained with Faraz Sahabi for a while, who's a technical genius. But John Kavanagh's got such a calm way of coaching, such a confident way. Their gym, obviously being the ones who produce Conor McGregor, there'll be a certain aura about that when you step in the gym, even though, you know, it's a bit of a suspect gym these days. But going to train there, John Kavanagh's a legit coach. You've got legit jiu-jitsu coaches there too. I'm really seeing big improvements in Johnny Walker since going over there.
I do feel like on the top of SGB Island, it's hard to have lots of good fighters when you've got your gym based out of Dublin.
Yeah.
Like, it's a very obscure place to go. If SGB was maybe based in the UK, I'm sure that maybe there are divisions around. I think there's like an SGB. Yeah,
they have them in. It's not only Ireland now, I don't think.
No, they have a few of them. But with the Dublin one in particular, the one which Conor came from, it's hard to have all these fighters. I know we saw like a few fighters from like Scandinavia and whatnot. Like, you know, I think was Macman from there.
Yeah, McCartney.
And Gunnar
Nelson, yeah.
So there are definitely big names coming out, but it's mostly a matter of that kind of part of the world, the kind of British Isles and just to the northwest of it, you know, towards Iceland and Greenland, where there might not be so many places as easily accessible, although obviously the States are just there. With this, like you said, the aura there, Johnny Walker as an individual is a very confident, flamboyant individual.
Yeah, definitely.
And I feel like that's something which maybe him and Conor have in similarities to an extent. Maybe not so much in the outrageous way Conor was. However, a lot of that was up to an act. He was probably a little bit like Johnny Walker.
Yeah.
Just in everyday, day-to-day life.
Maybe not as goofy and weird, but...
Yeah, I feel like there are a lot of personalities like that, though.
Yeah.
And a lot of the time, that's what people strive for. And I think that level of pride, and I'd say maybe even to an extent, arrogance sort of.
Delusion.
Delusion. Yeah, but they can back up, but that's the thing. So it's not really delusion, it's just that sense of arrogance, but good arrogance, that good confidence. They do really thrive in that. Ankalaev is a hard opponent for him still.
Yeah. And
this could be a really technical, exciting fight. However, I think because it's going to go over a 5-round period, because it's a 5-round fight, I don't see a decision.
No. For me, I'm so split on if this could go to the judges' scorecards or not. I'm really not sure. I think Ankalaev has the tendency to kind of get into a fight where he's kind of just waiting for the perfect counter punch. And we've seen since Johnny Walker has made these big improvements, there's been a couple of his fights where he's a bit tentative to really go for the finish. And like the Anthony Smith fight and a couple others, we saw that. So I think there is a decent chance it might go to the judges.
I don't know how much they'll be able to take from each other. That's the thing.
Yeah.
Because of how hard they both hit and how clean they hit as well. And that's the thing. It would be exciting to see it over the judges, and I don't think it's going to be a boring fight at all.
No.
I really don't. I think it's going to be very high-paced. I think we're going to see lots of very cool kicks and lots of striking from range. It'd be really interesting to see with the wrestling as well. That'd be really interesting because I do see Ankalaev wrestling in this fight.
Yeah, same.
In my head, I'm thinking 4th round Ankalaev. I just think he's going to pick him apart. I think he's going to cause damage. Maybe those big legs will potentially save Johnny Walker from having his legs absolutely battered. However, I think he will be worn.
Do you not think that if it really comes to like a lengthy fight, that Ankalaev's legs are going to be a lot worse for wear, and how could he deal with the leg hits going into those later rounds?
I think that he'll be able to tolerate it. I really do. I think it will be very, very damaging. However, like with this, these fighters are used to being leg kicked like that, and although leg kicks are brutal, think about how many fights we see where legs are actually brutalised and they're able to just cope with it just enough.
I mean, he almost came back and won that Blachowicz fight, which is crazy because he couldn't walk in the second round.
And that's the thing, these fighters are so good at adapting.
Yeah.
I think that although it will cause issues, and there could always be stuff which happens after a fight. Like, we could always find stuff out after a fight, like someone's properly mucked their leg up.
Can't walk for... I mean, I remember Dustin Poirier taking a fight against... I can't remember who he was fighting after. It was after the Gaethje fight, the Alvarez first fight. It was a few months after the Gaethje fight, and apparently his legs were still messed up from the Gaethje fight. Weren't recovered fully, which is crazy.
And that's the thing, a lot of the time they won't recover fully at all. And that's not saying I think this fight can result in like a long-lasting injury. However, they do fight for it. This is something which does happen. We look at, like, was it John Jones versus...
Thiago Santos.
Yeah, Thiago Santos.
Tore all his ligaments in both knees.
Was it like 7 injuries, something like that, and he fought through that.
Multiple surgeries after it and ruined his career, but, was it worth it for a split decision?
Well, it's... Yeah. You look at how these fighters fight for it, though. A lot of the time, they're able to manage just fine. I don't know if this will be a major issue. I think it will just be a matter of slowing it down, really. However, I think with Ankalaev, he's such a good counter-puncher. Although I don't see Johnny Walker getting close, although I see him really utilising that 6'6" range, which you have to. I feel as though Ankalaev's going to pick him apart, and I could see him landing just that big shot, that big kick. Or maybe potentially on the ground, although on the ground it would be interesting to see. Yeah. Like you said about the jiu-jitsu.
People might say I'm copying you, but I'm going... Did you go 4th round sub or TKO?
I'm going to go finish.
Yeah, I'm going 4th round TKO as well. I think I don't want to pick decision because I know everyone's going to pick finish on the verdict league and I don't want to fall behind early on. So I'm going to go finish as well and just hope that it happens in between those 5 rounds. But for this one, I'm really not sure if it's going to go to the scorecards or not. I think there's a decent chance it will. But I think it's a safer bet, especially with Johnny Walker showing his chin at times and stuff. It's a safe pick to think Ankalaev's going to catch him with something big and counter him at some point. Or just, I could see it just being a wrestling dominant performance and just ground and pounding him out later on when he tires him out a bit. So yeah, I'm going with you on that one. We do have a lot of, well, not a lot of news, but we got a decent amount of news we're going to touch on as well now. What do you want to start on? There's a lot to talk about. I kind of want to start on this boxing. Anthony Joshua, why have I forgot his name? Anthony Joshua, Francis Ngannou fighting. I think 8th of March as well, so not even that far away. We're going to do a full breakdown on the channel as well, so really excited for that. What was your first thoughts hearing this massive fight for Ngannou?
So it's honestly so deserving, really. Like, to think that you go from the UFC to that, and that's your first boxing fight, is beyond impressive. He wasn't necessarily known for his striking in the UFC. Not to say that wasn't good. It was very good striking. However, it's not something which the power. Yeah. The technicality of it. Although looking against Tyson Fury, he looked like a boxer. He looked like someone who'd been boxing for about 30 years. He really did. He was so clean, and Tyson looked shook. Yeah. This is interesting because, without sounding disrespectful, I think this is probably the first real big test for it. Yeah. And the reason why I say that is because the moment Tyson started getting hit, he did not want to be there.
I don't know if I agree with that fully because, although it might not look like it because how good Ngannou's chin is, he got hit a lot with big shots. Like, either way you look at it, it was a super close fight, and both had really good moments during the fight. It
was a super close fight. However, you shouldn't be making it look like a super close fight if you're Tyson Fury and you're fighting somebody in their first ever boxing match.
Well, so
and his face, just the way he looked.
How the look when he was on the floor and he was like looking up at him.
Yeah, he looked scared.
Yeah, he did.
He actually looked terrified.
Yeah, he did.
And I don't think he didn't look in his best shape either.
I had a little thought on this fight on that. I don't know what your opinions are on it. So both of us thought when the Tyson Fury fight got announced, Ngannou was going to get smoked, right? I think everyone thought that. Do you think there's a possibility that Joshua does what Fury probably should have and just smokes Ngannou? Or do you think Ngannou would have made even more improvements and there's just no chance that happens?
I could see him getting smoked.
Yeah.
Potentially. I really can. I think the way Joshua is, and it's very different as well because with Tyson Fury, he's not like some super long, reachy fighter, is he at all?
Or the length is there, but the power maybe on the end of his punches isn't the same as a Joshua.
A massive thing, and I think that Joshua's a lot more better when it comes down to like your technical kind of boxing. I really do. I think that he's a lot better at the movement as well. The movement's a lot there.
This is interesting because people would really disagree with us on this, but I think when watching Anthony Joshua, the fundamentals of what I'll call it is like the Olympic boxing style that Joshua has, like Fury has the gypsy boxing style, you know what I mean? Like he's light on his feet, he is quick, and a lot of people will think he's a more technical boxer than this. But I just want to sort of lay out this. There's a very big possibility this year that Joshua beats Ngannou way more convincingly than Tyson Fury did. That could definitely happen. He could lose, you know. If Ngannou hits Joshua big, he's not going to get up like Fury did. Let's be real. He's not got that fire inside him like Fury does. I don't think, anyway. But there's a big possibility that at the end of this year, Usyk would have beaten Tyson Fury like he did beat Joshua, and Joshua would have beaten Ngannou way better than Fury did. So by the end of this year, we won't know in my opinion, that's how it's going to play out as well. We will not know who the best British heavyweight boxer on the planet is at heavyweight at the end of this year. And if you asked to start last year after those Wilder fights, everyone would have said Tyson Fury is way better than Joshua. And I've always thought it's a bit harsh. Joshua, in my opinion, has had a legendary career and gets a lot of unnecessary hate, and he's really shown his balls by taking this fight. Are you surprised that he took this challenge?
I don't think so at all. I think this is the most logical fight for boxing anyway. I think that once you've beaten Tyson Fury, you need to look to beat the other greatest in the world. And it's an exciting fight as well because everybody wants to see how Ngannou's going to do.
Yeah.
And it's a big money fight as well because of that. Because with boxing, obviously, we know who the top fighters in boxing are. We know what the top level is. Ngannou, although he's ranked number 10 now, or he's ranked in the top 10, he's not been tested really. He's only been tested by one fighter. And that's not... It's a big test. You can't say he's not been tested, but you can say that he's not been tested enough. He's basically just put his toe in the water, really.
Yeah. Definitely.
Although, in all fairness, it is also against Tyson Fury, so it's almost like, you know, going all in water.
Jumping in with the great whites.
Yeah.
He is, literally.
You need to just swim a bit more. See how that goes.
Yeah, and just so happy with this matchup. I think there could be not better ones, actually. No, this is the best matchup in heavyweight boxing right now. You got Deontay Wilder fighting Shang as well. That might even be on the undercard. And the winner of that might fight the winner of each other. I think after watching Deontay Wilder lose the other week, he had a bad loss. I don't think he'll be jumping into MMA and fighting Ngannou, so that one's kind of blown out of the water. Getting on to some other news. Two big fight announcements. Again, I find it weird talking about fight announcements because I just want to break it down and give a prediction every time we bring it up. But you know, we'll skirt around that right now. But how excited are you for the Dustin Poirier, Benoit Saint Denis, and the Charles Oliveira, Arman Tsarukyan announcements?
So Benoit Saint Denis, this is exactly what he needs. This is the fight he needs. He needs to be just chucked against a big opponent.
Yeah, I agree.
Because he is consistently doing bits against opponents who are in the middle of that ranking, towards the lower end of the top 15. And the way he fights as well, it's not just who he's beaten, but he fights like a high-level MMA fighter.
Yeah.
He has the technique there. He does the right things. He's very tough as well. He needs to be thrown against a really big opponent. And Dustin Poirier is an interesting one as well because I think stylistically this is a very, very good fight.
I think I've seen a lot of people on Twitter and people I speak to, etc., kind of just straight away saying, you know, it's finally time Benoit Saint Denis is going to take Poirier out the top 5 and stuff like that. I do not think it will be that simple at all. I think this fight is gonna be a bloodbath. I do think that Benoit Saint Denis is going to get sort of dragged into those waters like he did against Alessi dos Santos. And although we saw he's good there, once he does start taking damage, that's where Poirier is the most dangerous. So this matchup on UFC 299 is one to be maybe one of the best UFC fights ever. It could have those sort of connotations about it. Is that the right word? Connotations about it? I don't know, but it's got that sort of hype around it. And what about the Charles Oliveira-Arman Tsarukyan one? Again, just another young up-and-comer getting one of the best lightweights of all time. This one is a banger.
It's very similar. Obviously, Tsarukyan's a bit more tested. Well, he's a lot more tested, and he's proven as well. You can't not put him against Charles Oliveira. It is the natural next step. And this is an exciting fight as well because they're both very good on the feet. They're both very good on the ground, although Charles is going to be a lot better when it comes down to jiu-jitsu in contrast to that wrestling. This could be a very exciting fight. I don't think it'll be super scrambly. I think it'll be very technical.
Yeah.
And I don't want to see it take too much place on the floor because I can potentially see a sub Tsarukyan's way.
Really?
Well,
I see any of their way, really. Let's be real, though.
Yeah, but there's just something about Charles.
Oh, right, you think Charles might sub?
Yeah.
Oh,
Potentially.
I think Charles could get submitted too, kind of against a pressure wrestler. Didn't look great against Islam in that sort of style.
He could, but I just want to believe.
Yeah, you'd hope, wouldn't you?
Yeah, and that's the thing. Although Tsarukyan also does just surprise everyone constantly. Like his last fight out against Dariush?
Yeah, brutal knockout. Both of them knocking out Dariush brutally in their last fights.
But you wouldn't have anticipated that at all, really. No. You would have thought that it'd be quite a scrambly bout.
Yeah, leading on to that, I do want to talk about just the possibility, maybe, do you think there's any chance UFC 299 can be better than UFC 300? So some of the big fights we've got announced on UFC 299 at the moment. Kevin Holland against Michael Venom Page. Obviously, that's a massive fight. Michael Venom Page coming in. It says he's 12-0, which is just not true. I don't know where they've got that from. But a massive fight against Kevin Holland and Michael Pereira fighting Michael Alisashek, who is a great fighter as well. Peter Yan, Song Yadong, Gilbert Burns, Jack Della Maddalena, Pedro Munoz, Kyla Phillips, Gamrot, Rafael dos Anjos, Curtis Blades, Jolin Almeida, Caitlin Shakugian, Macy Barber, Dustin Poirier, Benoit Saint Denis, Sean O'Malley, Marlon Vera. That is an insane card. That could be better than 300. There's a chance.
So potentially, I don't know though, because I feel like with 300 they haven't added enough yet.
No.
And this is what it is, because looking at what's been confirmed for it so far and looking what's in talks at the moment, like I've just seen a notification come up, I don't know how valid this is, Cody Garbrandt versus Figueiredo is in works with 300.
Oh yeah, that's insane. That'll probably be on the prelims too.
Yeah, and I don't know if the order of this is correct, because just from what I can see here, it says
it's not, because Bo Nickel, Cody Brundage on the prelims, I know that.
Yeah.
But the fight's announced are fire right now. Yeah,
exactly. Like, I can see there's only one of these fights on the prelims, right?
Yeah, and Weili Zhang against Zhang Yonan just been announced for UFC 302. Taking up maybe I wanted to see Alex Pereira. Maybe they'll add another title fighter. Apparently Bilal Muhammad is on there as well against Leon Edwards. So if we have them two title fights, what are the chances of them adding a third title fight? We get that once every few years.
If that, really.
Yeah.
Like, that's a very
handful of times. I do think this would be the card to do it. I wouldn't be surprised if they do. I saw something, again, I'm just reporting on news here, so don't shoot the messenger. Tom Aspinall, Brock Lesnar. I actually did see something about that. I don't know who said it. I think it might have been Bisping or something. And, they did tease a Brock Lesnar comeback a couple of years back against Daniel Cormier, where he came in the cage and pushed him. So that would be insane if they could get that done. But let's be real, that's not happening. But yeah, so what, you're definitely thinking UFC 300 is going to be better?
I think it's too early. So, however, I think the way it's looking at the moment, I think 300 is going to be... I think 299 is going to be sick. Going to be really, really good. And I think 300 is going to be better. And even if they don't put a third title fight on there, it could be a matter of 299, 300, and 301. Could all just be sick cards. It could just be a sick free card. Which it could potentially be. There are so many fights to make, and looking at these cards, there are a lot of fights which aren't booked in quite yet. A lot of these big fights, a lot of these matchups we spoke about. I think the only way UFC, I think that UFC 300. I mean, if we put like maybe McGregor and Chandler on there, that'd be sick as well.
Yeah, I think that's they've kind of set a date for that, haven't they?
Yeah,
I think June they said International Fight Week, which they haven't announced it. Conor McGregor announced it, so you can probably guarantee that's not happening on June. But
yeah, I wouldn't say that's like official, UFC kind of.
no, I mean, he said it would be at 185 as well, didn't he? Which is just imagine him and Chandler fighting at 185.
Yeah, it doesn't make a lot of sense.
No,
really,
no sense at all. I was actually for the last thing, going to touch on that, but I do want to touch on, I think more importantly, Tom Aspinall was really bargaining for his fight at heavyweight. John Jones, to be honest, I got his Twitter up right here, and I was going to start reading out the tweets he made, but he made about 500 tweets directed at Tom Aspinall, and I really can't be bothered to sit here and read through them again because, he does my head in, John Jones does. But the first one, so you get the kind of context of it. Only 4 recognisable opponents and already the King of England. Must be nice. There will be legendary tales told about you and your infamous call-outs. So that's kind of he's going to Tom Aspinall for wanting the fight, which is so strange. He also, someone replies saying he's done all he can. Can you blame him for being frustrated? John Jones says, I mean, it doesn't really work like that. So becoming the interim champion and expecting to fight the champion and him defend against a rival contender opponent, it doesn't work like that in the UFC. I mean, clearly this sport's just boxing now, if it's working like that. He says, I was a champion when I was 23 years old. You can't show up at the age of 30 pretending like you've been chasing me your whole career. When 90% of my life, I don't know who you are. You don't know who his resume is. Basically, the point of this is John Jones is just so weird. I really don't get how his mind works. He's saying you can't turn up when you're 30 years old and chase me. You're literally the champion of his weight class. Like, how does that make sense?
Do you think that maybe this is all a build-up to the do fight? Well, maybe he just taunting him.
I think John Jones doesn't want that, but I think people and Tom are slowly talking him into it because, Tom Aspinall did reply and said basically this is just all of what he's doing on Twitter was just an ego trip for him so he could tweet out all his best accomplishments because he starts just going on about loads of rubbish. Honestly, it's a painful read if any of you just want to go on Twitter and read John Jones' tweets. I don't recommend it, but you'll get context of what it is. But I think Tom's probably going to talk him around to fight, and then if he doesn't, I mean, sorry, it's obvious that I don't like John Jones, but for me, I will not remember you as the GOAT if you fight someone who hasn't won a fight in 5 years instead of fighting clearly the best heavyweight in the world. I don't care what people say. John Jones might obviously beat him. There's a big possibility that happens, but he's not active right now. He's injured. Best heavyweight on the planet is Tom Aspinall, clearly, and he clearly doesn't want to fight him. So I just wanted to get it out there, our opinions on it. I don't know what your thoughts are. I'm sure everyone knows mine.
Yeah, no, it's just a strange behaviour, like you said. It is really strange behaviour. With John Jones, it's very hard to respect that, especially with the time off. A lot of it's not his fault. It's not his fault at all, really. However, when you've been that inactive, you need to be ready to take that fight. And it's the best for that division because, with all due respect, with the exception of, Aspinall winning the heavyweight title, interim, what exciting has really happened in the past 3 years?
Yeah.
Literally nothing.
Heavyweight, yeah, true.
Every big fighter has fought each other. With the exception of, I know there's the Cyril Gahn fight, but even then that wasn't super exciting because that was a very predictable outcome.
He's saying all this and then he comes back and fights Cyril Gahn for a title who Cyril Gahn has done absolutely nothing in his career. No, that's so harsh actually. He has done a lot.
He's done a lot, especially considering how long MMA's been legal.
Accomplishment-wise, for Tom Aspinall is way more deserving of a John Jones fight than Cyril Gahn was ever right now.
So I do agree with you. The only thing I would say is it doesn't really make sense to say that Aspinall doesn't deserve a shot but Cyril Gane does. You have to remember MMA's only been legal in France for how many years?
I don't know why that would have. That doesn't.
No, but it does because he's only been in the UFC for so many years.
Yeah, he's been around as long as Tom Aspinall now, though.
And that's why I said it doesn't make any sense. That's why it does matter, because they've been there at the same time. So why are you saying he does? Because he clearly deserves a title shot, right?
Yeah, but no, because Gane literally just got a title shot and got held down for 5 rounds against Ngannou.
Yeah, but he deserved it, right? Because he got the title shot.
I don't think he did deserve it.
No, but in John Jones' mind.
Oh yeah, but that's what I'm saying.
That's what it's all about, because this isn't to do with anything real, really. It's also John Jones' Twitter.
Yeah, well, John Jones calls the shots though, which shouldn't happen in the UFC.
No, he just shows he's a hypocrite.
Yeah,
and that's the point. So it does matter.
Yeah. Well, what shows John Jones is a hypocrite?
Yeah.
I'm agreeing with you there, but you know it does matter in the fact that John Jones does get to call the fact. I'm just saying it shouldn't matter. Like the UFC should be based on fighting the best, and you know John Jones shouldn't be able to choose that he's not going to fight the best. Even when he came back, he didn't pick the best heavyweight or the biggest heavyweight to fight at that time. There was people on better runs than Cyril Gane to fight. So, you know, and now he's picking Stipe, who got knocked out by the true best heavyweight in the world, Francis Ngannou. None of these guys can claim that. Especially, he came back and beat a guy Francis just did, and now he's fighting a guy Francis knocked out 5 years ago, or however long ago it was, probably a bit less. So, yeah, it's just a really weird situation.
I do think, though, that no fighter should call the shots.
No, that's what I think too.
Yeah, and it doesn't make any sense really. Like even like your really big names, because it's not something which you shouldn't be able to gatekeep a division.
No,
like, and that's literally what the UFC is like at the heavyweight division. These fighters are quite genuinely just like this title is ridiculous. Really, the fact that it's been held up as long as it has, the fact that it's allowed to be held up as long as it has, especially when we have a look at a lot of fighters who had to give up their belts.
Yeah.
Recently, you know, like with the GSP or even Yuri, most recent example, that was appalling.
Yeah, I think just to end it on this point, I think we've gone on about this too long. But so because in my opinion, I don't look at John Jones as the best heavyweight in the world. When it comes down, who do you think is the best heavyweight on the planet right now? This might be a silly question because we're biased, but
it is a really hard one. I think. At this present moment, Tom Aspinall, just because of the run he's on. I think that is hard because everyone else has kind of been either beaten or isn't like...
No one's on a good run, really.
No,
Almeida, but I think Tom smokes them all.
Trouble is, though, with Tom, he's also like relatively complete martial artist.
Yeah, he is.
And that's what it is. I mean, Cyril Gane is also very good, but Cyril Gane hasn't got the ground game.
He's the opposite of a complete martial artist.
Yeah, literally, he's very one-dimensional. Yeah. He's a world-class, elite kickboxer.
Literally, such an easy matchup for James to come back and pick. I thought that, again, that's just him coming back and picking what he wants, really, isn't it?
It's a shame, though, because if Cyril Gane could wrestle, I would probably argue that same as the jiu-jitsu as well, because Aspinall was also very good at the ground.
Yeah.
If he was good at jiu-jitsu, if he had high-level jiu-jitsu and wrestling, I'd argue that Cyril Gane was the best because I think that technically on the feet, he is a better fighter than Aspinall.
Probably, yeah, maybe.
Aspinall probably has significantly more knockout power.
But maybe a bit better boxing. I mean, Gane almost did get knocked out by Tuivasa, so that's a argument you can make.
Tuivasa is tough, though.
Yeah.
And he hits, like, multiple trains, though.
Yeah, I think wrapping up now, basically just saying John Jones needs to fight Tom Aspinall before he retires, otherwise he's a coward. That's my thought on it. Might sound harsh and a bit like weird coming from someone just sat behind a computer screen talking about one of the best fighters ever, but I think John Jones has got real deep insecurities. I think it stinks of it every time he goes near the internet, or his whole career is just stank of it, in my opinion. But yeah, looking forward to next week, finally back with the UFC. We're going to be looking to change up the content a lot this year as well. We hope you guys have enjoyed listening to this week's episode of the Combat Chats podcast. Make sure to follow us around. Rate us 5 stars on Spotify, subscribe. You know, that's how we'll grow. Thank you for watching.